Rick Ness just stunned the entire Yukon mining world. A claim long abandoned and nicknamed the Dead Zone by locals has just delivered an astonishing $70 million in gold. This was the same ground others had written off for good. Now, veteran miners are left speechless as Rick's crew uncovers deep pay streaks no one thought existed. By using upgraded wash plants and advanced ground radar, Rick targeted layers missed by everyone else. Tight, compact gravel, hiding fine gold and unseen veins. The moment the sluices ran, gold recovery spiked overnight. By the end of the week, the haul shattered every prediction, challenging everything people believed about the claim. This wasn't a stroke of luck. It was the result of calculated strategy. Rick studied old maps, corrected drainage errors, and discovered an untouched pay line sitting just beneath the depth where earlier digs had stopped. What others left behind, Rick turned into a historic payday. It's a bold reminder. In gold mining, success isn't just about the dirt. It's about data, grit, and the guts to go where others gave up. Hit like and subscribe to see how Rick Ness pulled $70 million from ground everyone else considered cursed. The Yukon looked dead. Rusted pipes, abandoned sluices, and skeletal machinery frozen in time litter the landscape. Locals called it Dead Man's Ground, a cursed claim where 3 separate crews went bankrupt. Everything left behind was swallowed by permafrost, turning the site into a symbol of failure. Then Rick Ness showed up, alone, determined, and against every warning. After a rough previous season, most people believed he was finished, buried in debt, burnt out. But something had changed. There was a fire in his eyes. Whispers swirled through the camps about a lost channel, buried deep beneath glacial rock that no miner had ever reached. Rick went all in. He mortgaged his equipment, took out private loans, every cent riding on a hunch with zero guarantees. His crew thought he'd lost his mind. The machines froze in the muck. Diesel ran dry. But Rick didn't flinch. He wasn't chasing luck. He was chasing proof that this dead land still had life buried beneath the frost. A few days later, while scavenging an old shack near the creek, Rick stumbled across something strange. A weathered notebook wedged behind a rotting beam. Its water-damaged cover read, K Beats, 1979. Inside, hand-drawn contour lines mapped a fault never recorded on any official survey. Faded notes pointed to a hidden gold channel, 160 feet below where previous digs had ended. The handwriting was rough but purposeful. This wasn't speculation, it was a map. Under a flickering floodlight, Rick laid the pages across his dozer's hood. His crew gathered around. Some laughed, thinking it was a joke. But when Rick overlaid the sketches with his modern sonar scans, everything lined up. Same curves, same depths, the same hidden path through frozen ground. Suddenly, the claim wasn't dead anymore. It was whispering secrets buried beneath decades of frost. At first light, engines roared to life. Bulldozers chewed through the permafrost, peeling back layers untouched for years. Machinery groaned, hydraulic lines burst, parts froze solid, but no one stopped. Rick worked 20-hour days without pause. Caked in mud, eyes locked on the cut, Rick panned the first test sample. Just a few specks, barely enough to cover a fingertip, but enough to keep hope alive. Still, morale dropped as fuel dwindled. That's when Rick called in an old friend, Freddie Dodge. Freddie walked the cut, studied the walls, then pointed down. There's something dense at 140 feet. That was all Rick needed. Meanwhile, rumors swirled. Investors, rivals, even old claim jumpers were watching from the shadows, convinced Rick would go broke before striking gold. But they didn't see what he saw. A subtle signal in the scans, a shift in density, proof that something massive was waiting down below. Rick never slowed. The lights stayed on through the night. Drills bit deeper into the frozen ground, grinding through untouched layers of earth. Then the bit locked onto something, dense, compacted blue clay. Every miner knows that color. It means an ancient riverbed, undisturbed for centuries. Borehole data spiked. Sonar confirmed it. A split in the ancient river system curved like a serpent beneath the camp. The river that once carved through the Yukon had been sleeping under Rick's claim all along. Cores came up shivering in the cold, filled with coarse gravel and tiny flashes of gold. Even under a film of mud, the flakes shimmered like lightning veins. Geologists were stunned. The density reading suggested a pay pocket larger than anything ever seen in the region. Rick didn't hesitate. He ordered a vertical trench straight down, ignoring every warning about pressure buildup, water collapse, and unstable ground. The crew pushed back. The foreman cursed, but Rick's voice cut through the wind. "If we stop now, we lose everything." Excavators dropped their buckets in unison, layer by layer peeling away the earth. Hydraulic lines hissed, alarms blared, mud boiled at the edges as groundwater surged in. Then the sluice changed color. Black muck gave way to glowing streaks of raw gold. Cameras caught it all live, molten lines of gold flowing down the riffles like liquid sunlight. The crew froze in disbelief. This wasn't lighting tricks, it was real. The ground was bleeding gold. Rick said nothing. He just watched, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth, like he knew this moment was coming all along. But the old wash plant couldn't handle it. The weight of gold-charged slurry choked the system. Pumps clogged. Everything strained to keep up. That's when Rick gave the order. Bring in something new. Something no one had seen before. It was a machine built in secret, away from cameras and the world's eyes, during the long, frozen Yukon winter. Rick called it the Titan Reclaimer, a beast of metal, muscle, and pure innovation. A hybrid born from Freddie Dodge's engineering brilliance and Juan Ibarra's mechanical precision, the Titan was unlike anything the goldfields had ever seen. Equipped with twin centrifugal spirals, it spun out heavy clay and magnetite while capturing micro-grain gold at triple the usual recovery rate. Every bolt shined with intent. Every weld told a story. The crew could only stare. It looked more like something from science fiction than a mining site. When the first bucket load hit the feeder, even the sound changed. A deep, resonant hum rolled through the valley, like the earth itself had woken up. For a few minutes, chaos reigned. Tailings spilled over, pumps rattled, gold sensors maxed out. The sluice mats lit up under the floodlights, glowing with so much concentrate, it didn't even look real. Over the comms, Juan's voice crackled with laughter. "Rick's flooding the Yukon with gold dust!" And it wasn't just hype. The numbers were staggering. In a single day, they pulled more gold than in the entire previous season. The Titan didn't just work, it devoured the ground beneath it. And word spread fast, too fast. Within days, rival miners were showing up along the ridgelines. Trucks idled silently in the distance, binoculars trained on Rick's camp. Some even launched drones at dawn, circling overhead, until Rick's crew blasted them out of the sky with high-pressure water cannons. Rumors exploded through Dawson City. People said Ness was pulling gold out like candy from gravel. Investors started calling. News outlets sniffed around. The pressure mounted. Rick knew what came next. Lawsuits, sabotage, government inspections. He shut it all down. Gates were welded shut, drones banned, guard dogs posted near the generators. What was once just another remote mining camp now felt more like a fortified outpost. Floodlights swept across the icy mud, and through the night, the Titan thundered on. Even its sound had changed. No longer just mechanical noise, it pulsed like something alive. Then, strange things started happening after dark. The ground began to tremble, just a little at first, like distant thunder. But the rumbling grew stronger, more rhythmic, almost alive. The seismographs went wild, recording erratic shifts directly beneath the cut. Underground water pressure was changing. The ancient river channel, dormant for thousands of years, was waking up, reshaping the ground from the inside out. Vibrations rattled storage containers, knocked tools from shelves. Some of the crew wanted to stop. They were afraid the trench might collapse. Rick pulled on his gloves and walked to the edge of the pit. The Titan's roar echoed behind him. "If the ground's moving," he said, staring into the churning mud, "then we're close." No hesitation, no fear, because beneath the trembling earth, beyond the rumble and chaos, Rick believed the main gold vein, the one that could change everything, was waiting. The night wore on. Lights cut through the darkness as machines carved deeper into the ancient ground. At first, the tremors blended in with the usual groan of steel and churn of mud, but then everything shifted. The rumble sharpened. A low vibration became a rolling pulse beneath their feet. Buckets trembled against frozen walls. Hydraulic lines hummed under growing tension. Everyone felt it. The Earth was no longer resisting. It was responding. Day 41 hit with a bitter chill and relentless noise. The Titan groaned in rhythm with the excavators, each bucket heavier than the last. The trench shook from the constant digging, but it wasn't background noise anymore. Then it happened. A loud crack, like a gunshot, ripped through the site. Then another. The north wall shivered, then gave way. A massive slab of frozen clay, over 20 tons, broke loose and crashed into the trench, swallowing an entire excavator. Hydraulic lines snapped, flailing like angry snakes, spraying fluid across the mud. Alarms screamed. Radios erupted with shouting. Rick ran straight into the chaos, ignoring the danger, barking orders into his headset. The trench was flooding, fast. Mud and slurry surged upwards. One excavator cab was half buried, its lights flickering beneath the sludge. Without a second thought, Rick dove in. The water felt like ice cutting through his skin. He slammed a crowbar against the door, forcing it just wide enough to pull the stunned operator free. Just as another wall began to crack and slide, they fought through waist-deep muck, barely clearing the pit before the ground behind them gave way with a roar, like the earth was tearing itself apart. For hours, the crew battled to stabilize the collapse. Pumps screamed, floodlights swung wildly, and for the first time in days, the Titan reclaimer stood silent. At dawn, fog clung to the wreckage like smoke after a fire. A quarter of the pit was gone. Machinery twisted and buried in a mound of muck, but as sunlight cut through the haze, something caught the light. A shimmer, at first subtle, then blinding. Gold, not specks, not dust, solid veins, chunks, pebbles, flakes, packed tight within the collapsed wall. What had nearly destroyed their operation had instead cracked the earth open and revealed its final secret. Samples from the debris came back with numbers that stunned even the geologists. The gold concentration wasn't just high, it shattered every local record. Core analysis revealed 1,580 ounces per 100 yards of gravel, 10 times richer than any ground mined in the Yukon in the last decade. And the deposit stretched across nearly 200 meters, an ancient glacial pocket sealed tight for over 10,000 years, protected by pressure and ice. The collapse hadn't ruined them. It had uncovered the motherlode. Within hours, the Titan reclaimer was roaring again. Trucks lined up. Dumpers ran non-stop. The air was thick with the sharp tang of metal and wealth. Cleanup after cleanup brought in pounds of gold. So much that Rick had to start melting bars right there on site just to keep up. Every pan sparkled. Every sluice overflowed. The crew stopped talking about ounces. They were counting in pounds now. Some of the crew can't even believe what they're witnessing. Under the glare of floodlights, the runoff transforms into liquid gold, glowing as it flows through the chutes like molten fire. Rick stands quietly at the platform's edge, hands caked in grease and mud, recording a message on his phone. His voice is low, steady, almost reverent. "This isn't just pay dirt," he says. "This is history rewriting itself." Behind him, the Titan rumbles like an ancient engine reborn, chewing through a river channel that refused to be forgotten. But history never stays buried for long. As whispers spread beyond the valley, the vultures begin to circle. Corporate mining giants start sniffing around. Survey drones buzz overhead despite the no-fly zone. Some land agents send polished partnership offers. Others skip the pleasantries. Anonymous threats disguised as legal notices begin arriving at night. Phantom environmental violations. Paperwork warfare. Rick's lawyer recognizes the tactic immediately, a coordinated pressure campaign to force him off the claim before he can cash in. But it doesn't work. Rick's got something they don't. Proof that this land doesn't fall under any company's jurisdiction. His deep dive into old boundary records paid off. The site sits in a forgotten gray zone, a relic of a 1950s territorial dispute. No government office has clear ownership. No corporate deed applies. It's a loophole left behind by history and overlooked by bureaucracy. In other words, it's his. Still, the heat intensifies. More drones, more trucks parked along distant ridges, even quiet rumors of federal inspectors preparing a shutdown. Rick doesn't wait. He flips the entire operation to night mode. Radio silence, engines dampened, lights covered. The Titan now runs under tarps, quiet as a shadow. It moves through the frozen night like a ghost. Every ounce they recover goes straight to the on-site refinery, melted, cast, and sealed in bars before the sun rises. Then the weather turns. Snow creeps in early, blanketing the site and masking their movements. The crew becomes a blur of shapes beneath floodlights, silent and exhausted, but unrelenting. The gold doesn't stop. Crate after crate disappears into the dark, loaded into unmarked trucks that vanish down frozen highways before dawn. When the inspectors finally show up, clipboard-wielding men in bright vests, company reps in spotless boots, it's too late. The site looks abandoned. Machines sit idle beneath tarps. Generators are cold. The air still smells faintly of diesel and fire, but there's no sign of life. The pit? Flooded. The trench? Frozen solid and silent. They take photos, scribble warnings, toss out idle threats, but they're already chasing ghosts. Half the gold is long gone, melted and cast into anonymous bars, stamped only with serial numbers and the initials RN. They've been shipped far from the Yukon, to locations no one can trace, no one can touch. The officials leave empty-handed. Rival companies rage behind closed doors. And once again, Rick's camp falls quiet. Only one thing lingers, the faint vibration beneath the ground. A pulse. The echo of a buried channel that gave up its heart to the one man stubborn enough to believe it still had life left to give. The operation wasn't over, but from that moment forward, everything changed. Rick Ness wasn't just digging for gold anymore. Now, he was protecting what he'd already pulled from the earth. The floodlights buzz softly over the collapsed wall, casting a faint halo across frozen clay and broken rock. Deep beneath it all, the rest of the ancient channel still waits, buried even further down. Rick wipes his hands on his jacket and stares at the dark horizon. No smile, just a nod. A quiet acknowledgement. Like he heard something no one else could. The ground had spoken, and he wasn't done listening. By nightfall, the team was already in motion. Storm clouds rolled across the Yukon. Thunder drowned out the hum of engines. A convoy of unmarked trucks rumbled through the mud with headlights off, escorted by guards in black rain gear. The site went on full lockdown. No cameras, no chatter, no signals for satellites to catch. Under dimmed floodlights, gold bars were loaded one by one into reinforced crates, each weighing 50 pounds and stamped with only 2 words: Project Titan. Rain hammered down as forklifts raised the last pallets onto trucks. Beneath the tarps, raw gold gleamed. In the distance, helicopters hovered, blades slicing through the storm. As the convoy cleared the ridgeline, the choppers descended. Cargo hooks slammed into the mud like claws. Crates were lifted skyward and carried to a private airstrip hidden in the wilderness, where a C-130 transport plane waited with engines running hot. Every move was timed. Every route pre-cleared and encrypted. Rick oversaw the entire extraction from a rain-soaked platform, his jacket zipped to the chin, face streaked with water. There were no cheers, no celebration, just quiet satisfaction. The gold, sealed beneath the Yukon for 10,000 years, was finally free. And it was leaving. Rumors rippled through Dawson within hours. Some claimed the shipment was bound for a secret refinery in Switzerland. Others said it was headed to a vault in Iceland. Within 48 hours, whispers emerged that a European buyer had received a load matching Titan's estimated output. Officially, Rick reported just under $70 million in gold, but insiders, especially the crew who work the melts, quietly say the real number may have been double. No one could prove it, and no one dared ask. When the storm finally cleared, the site was empty. Machines stood still, tracks washed away by snow and rain. When Discovery's film crew arrived 2 weeks later to document what they assumed would be a triumphant season finale, they found nothing. The pit was flooded to the top. The roads sealed off with welded gates. The machinery dismantled. It looked less like a mine and more like someone had erased it from existence. The only thing left behind was a single steel beam, half buried in the mud, etched with 6 words scorched into the metal. Dead Man's Ground, paid in full. Months passed. Snow eventually blankets the claim, transforming the once bustling site back into a silent, white wasteland. But even as the dig site disappears beneath the frost, the stories don't stop. Locals still whisper about it. Some say that on certain nights, when the wind shifts just right, you can hear it, the low hum of engines deep beneath the frozen earth, like something is still stirring down there. Then, something strange happens. A geologist reviewing historical Yukon survey data flags an anomaly. A dense magnetic field beneath Rick's claim, one that simply shouldn't be there. Updated scans are ordered, and the results shock everyone. The imaging reveals a massive, perfectly symmetrical void, an enormous oval-shaped structure buried beneath the surface. It's too smooth to be a natural formation. Some scientists call it a collapsed quartz dome. Others aren't so sure. Quiet theories begin to circulate, hints of something far older, perhaps even artificial. An ancient structure sealed away beneath the earth long before the last ice age. Forgotten, undisturbed, until now. Then the gold itself adds fuel to the mystery. Lab analysis reveals something unexpected. Traces of platinum and iridium embedded in the recovered samples. These are elements usually linked to meteor impacts, not river deposits. The discovery challenges everything geologists thought they knew about the region. Maps are redrawn, research papers rewritten, and word spreads like wildfire. Within weeks, a new Yukon gold rush is underway. Dozens of miners descend on the valley, hoping to tap into the same invisible river that Rick Ness awakened from its frozen slumber. But no one finds what he did. The magnetic signature remains. The hidden channel stays locked beneath the permafrost, and the ground, once ripped open by machines and flooded with gold, falls silent again. Yet the legend refuses to die. Because Rick Ness didn't just strike gold. He uncovered something older, something buried for a reason. And some believe it was never meant to be disturbed, resting beneath the ice for tens of thousands of years, long before any human ever came searching for fortune.